Welcome on in. Hold on, I gotta turn that down over there. Welcome on into the live stream. This one's gonna be a fun one. I have a special guest here today that is the one and only Hayden Carroll, the Freemason, the Latter-day Saint, combined into one. And he's been making the rounds. You might have seen him on Ward Radio last night. So he's doing back-to-back double
right.
duty.
They pay me the big bucks for this.
The big bucks, you know, he gets the vouchers on the tithing funds. That's how the higher ups do it. They just turn in vouchers so they don't have to pay as much tithing. What are you at? 5% now? I'm just kidding.
That's right. If I told you I'd have to kill you.
Yeah. All right. On today's program, let me share this real quick. We're gonna do a couple of fun segments. And hold on, I gotta pull up here. There we go. Okay. So you see, Hayden Carroll joins the program. Hold on, where is this? All right, sorry about that. All right, secrets of a Masonic lodge revealed. So I walked into my local lodge, and I'm gonna have Hayden help me navigate what the heck happened when I was there. 'Cause some interesting thing happened. You probably maybe saw a video. If you haven't, please check it out. It features yours truly, Hayden Carroll. Third, we'll get into Did We Prove Mormonism? Hidden Gems, the reaction to the most interesting comments on the video about Freemasons and other comments from other places. And lastly, we're going to talk about some breaking news here that's happening in the land of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, how your mission might convince a college to give you a degree. So tune in later for all of that. But let's start with Secrets of a Masonic Lodge. This is a segment that is called, what did I call it? Through Elephant's Eyes. All right, in this segment, we're gonna share some behind the scenes, some personal experiences about what happened. So, on a random Sunday afternoon, I decided, it'd make some good video content if I just find my local Masonic lodge and walk right in. And so, piled the family into a van, had my wife drive, because chivalry. And we pulled up, and there it is, the Masonic lodge. The symbols are on the outside. You have the compass and the square. And I was just like, okay, wife, film me. I'm just going to walk in. I didn't know anything about it. In the video, I kind of discussed my journey of just deciding what to even wear. I was like, do I need to wear a suit and tie? I don't know. So I went with kind of business casual, and I just walked up to the door. And to my surprise, it was open. And I go in there. And, it's just like a standard building. I took footage of some of what that building looked like. You had different labels for the, remind me, Hayden, what is it called? The something right and the...
Oh, the Scottish and the York right?
Yeah, there's different labels for that. There's this book that had the symbol on it. And as far as I could tell, no one was there at first until I heard some noises upstairs. And I was a little nervous because I'm I don't know, if I'm going to interrupt something. Are they doing something? Turns out, Hayden, they were doing something. They told me later. They were practicing a ritual for degree 3.
Yeah, very cool.
Would I have seen something? I mean, it was a little strange that they were putting their clothes back on when they came out. I'm just kidding.
I mean,
I'm kidding.
I can't tell you too much, but yeah, there's props and clothing.
Yeah.
Things that they would wear that they wouldn't show the public. And some of it they would. They're pretty public about their aprons.
Yeah.
Right. You've probably seen those. But yeah, there's some other things and some other symbols that they may or may not show you. Remind me where you live. What state are you in?
I am in Montana.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I've never been there before, but I assume it's similar. I was initiated in Utah, but probably pretty similar.
Yeah. You were St. George, right?
Yeah.
I remember that because we moved from St. George to Montana.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yep.
St. George is great.
Yeah, I received my first 2 degrees in Cedar City, in the Cedar City Lodge. And then we had me and another guy who were receiving our third degree, and we decided to do it in St. George, which is where he was from. So we traveled there. It's about 45-minute drive.
Yeah.
So yeah, great. It was really fun.
Yeah. Okay. So while I'm walking around, I can't decide like what I'm gonna if I'm just gonna like call it quits that I didn't get to talk to anyone.
Mm.
But I end up going upstairs where I hear some noises. I'm also trying to be respectful, like I don't want to be that guy who's just like breaking in with some secret camera or something, you know. And so I stopped filming too, and I finally met a guy who was walking out, and I was like, "Hey," and he's like, hey," like, "What the heck are you doing here?" I'm just
Yeah.
like, I told him, "Look, I just want to ask some questions. I'm actually wanting to make a video. I'm a Latter-day Saint. I'm trying to learn about the similarities between Latter-day Saints and Freemasons. What can you tell me about Freemasons?" Super nice guy. Gave me a whole tour of everything. He was, what do you call it? Like one of the leaders at one point.
One of the past worshipful master,
Yes.
probably.
Yeah. His picture was on the wall. They like keep really good records.
Mm-hmm.
And so nice. I asked him, I was like, "So are you religious too?" And he's like, "Yeah, the famous rule is they don't talk about religion or politics," but he's like, "Yeah, I'm religious." And I was like, "Okay, so what religion are you?" And he said he's a Lutheran. And I was like, "Okay, how does Freemasonry impact your belief in your church? Like, does it help it? Does it enhance it? It has nothing to do with it." And he immediately was like, "Oh, it makes it better. Like my religious experience is way better because I'm a Freemason." Is that the case for you?
I would say yes. Now, I want to put a caveat there, a little asterisk there, to say that as a Latter-day Saint, especially, that's so heavy in symbolism, especially in the temple and in Scripture. It really is awesome. I wouldn't say it's necessary by any means. I would say that anyone who's interested, I would encourage them to look into it. But I won't sit here and say, yeah, it's the best thing that you could ever do, and you can't be a you know top Latter Day Saint or a scholar or a disciple of Christ if you're not a Freemason. I wouldn't say anything near that, but I would say it's really uh, insightful, and it helps you to gain a different perspective, which I think is really fascinating. I think is the best way to say it. And yeah, I would say it's enhanced uh, regarding the symbols and things like that.
So we got to talk about one thing that I thought was interesting. They told me for this particular lodge, and they did mention that it's not a rule for every lodge, that you have to be, but obviously you have to believe in the creator, the great architect. But in this particular lodge, they said you need to believe in a monotheistic God, which is interesting because I would say that Latter-day Saints are monotheistic. But I understand that there's some nuance to that, and there's a lot of like interesting discussion there. But it sounds like the lodge that you go to didn't. That's not one of the requirements.
Yeah, that's pretty rare, actually, from what I understand, is that they just say, "Do you believe in a higher power?" essentially. And I would agree with you. I wonder if they would let a Latter Day Saint join that lodge that you went to. I guess.
They didn't seem opposed to it, and it
Yeah.
seems more like a self
Yeah.
declaration.
Yes, it probably is. They're not going to be like, "Well, no, you worship, three gods, or you believe in many gods."
Well, I
But if
mean,
you just
like,
say it,
is a Christian much different when they have? I know, like they get around it with the Trinity, but there's
the
also
Father,
angels
yeah,
and whatnot, and I mean they don't
yeah,
really work, but
I think
those are kind of more
Latter Day
deity.
Saint, totally. But a Latter Day Saint could just say, "Yeah, I worship one God." They would
Yeah,
say the Father. We worship the Father.
yeah, or the Godhead.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but it's interesting because my wife was like, "Well, like, are Latter-day Saints monotheistic?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And I was like, "Well, wait a minute. I mean, I think so. I think if you were to gonna characterize it, that'd be the best way to go." But it is interesting.
You've heard of henotheism, which is
Yeah,
ancient Jewish. Many gods exist, but we worship one.
yeah,
That's probably what we fall in line more so with.
yeah. That could be. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting thing. This lodge, they said, has been around since like the 1870s or something.
Oh yeah, long time.
It's a pretty old one. I think it's been one of the, bigger. I think it was the first one in the state of Montana, and one of the more centralized ones in like the Midwest for a while.
What city is it in?
Billings.
Oh, Billings, Montana. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
1870. That's a long time ago.
I think it was around there. I hope I'm not quoting that wrong, but interesting nonetheless. Let's see. What else did I want to say? There were a few things in the video that we cut out of the final video that were kind of interesting. I asked you at least two additional questions that didn't make the final cut just because I'm trying to make things engaging and whatnot. And I was like, maybe I don't need those questions for the story I'm trying to tell. And I was kind of asking you about what it would be like for Latter-day Saints who are interested in joining Freemasons. And then I gave you the flip of what about Freemasons who are interested in joining the Latter-day Saints. So full disclosure, after I talked to this first Freemason master, the rest of them came out. There's 4 in total. All of them were masters. I think 2 of them had been, what do you call it again? Like the leader of the lodge?
Worshipful master.
The worshipful master. That's kind of a funny name.
Cool.
Do you aspire to be a worshipful master?
No.
No?
You get voted in, and so it's an election process. But no, I mean it could happen, but yeah, it's good. I've actually only held one other position, and just so you know, I don't know if you know this or the viewers know that I'm not currently attending a lodge since I moved.
You're inactive, man.
I'm inactive.
But you still pay your...
I pay my dues.
You pay your tithing.
Yeah, exactly. So I get my dues card every year, which is essentially like a temple recommend.
Yeah.
And as far as they're concerned, I'm an active member of the lodge. And they have plenty of those in Cedar City because people come through the college or the university there and join, and then they move away, but they still pay their dues.
So how would it work if you were to come up and visit the Billings Lodge where they require monotheism?
I could.
Doesn't matter because you're already a Mason?
Probably not. As long as I have my dues card, they probably would respect the Utah Grand Lodge, and I could. That's the authority that I would have. They would probably accept that.
I'm guessing a lot of pretty much everyone in Utah is familiar with Latter-day Saints because I grew up there. I think all the non-members know who Latter-day Saints are. You'd live under a rock if you don't. But here, unfortunately, I was like, Latter-day Saint, anyone? They're like, nope, I have no idea. Like we've heard maybe of Joseph Smith.
Really? In Montana, I would think they would be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Not as much as Utah, but at least a little bit.
There's a lot of Protestantism around here, which is awesome. Really cool. But yeah, I was a little surprised about that too. I thought maybe one of them would be a member or something, But
or at
no.
least an active member maybe, but interesting.
Yeah, they're all like, "Oh, I think this one brother is a Mormon." And they're like, "Really? He sure goes to the bar with us a lot." I don't like, I don't know. Like maybe he is. He could be. But anyway, where was I going though? The Masons, the Masters.
Oh yeah, what'd they say?
I was gonna say. So I was like everything they were talking about. It rings true to me. I think I have that gene of being interested in religion for whatever reason. I'm just at that stage of life, I guess. And I was seriously thinking, man, I might join the Freemasons. I might become one. But, I'm a little gun shy, especially when I find out it costs money. I'm pretty frugal. And I'm also thinking, like, what do they have that I couldn't get out of my experience in the church, And so part of that was, like, the reason why I was asking, okay, partially for myself. I have a cousin that somewhat recently joined, I think, and it's been a good experience for him. He's also a Latter-day Saint. So for those who are wanting to join, you had some words for that.
Yeah. Do you want me to? I could just read it's actually pretty short. This one. Do you want me to just get through it and we can stop and talk about it?
Yes, let's do it.
So just stop me wherever you want, or if I have extra commentary. So the question you asked me was, what advice would you give church members who are considering becoming Freemasons? What can Freemasonry offer that the church cannot? So I'm kind of talking to you in a way.
Exactly.
I didn't realize that you were looking to join. So here was my answer. I said, first of all, I'm very upfront about my position on the value of the church compared to the Freemasonry organization. And the reason I say this is because, as I said on Ward Radio last night, it's not uncommon for Latter-day Saints to kind of give me the side eye when they're like, "Oh, you're a Freemason?" Like that's like devil worship.
Oh, we'll get to that in some comments coming up.
Yeah, okay, good. It's good. So here's my answer. I'm upfront about my position. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints holds the proper God-given authority necessary for salvation of all people, and Freemasonry does not, nor does it claim such, right? There's no power struggle in my mind between like, oh, I'm loyal. Which one am I loyal to? It's like, I'm loyal to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to Jesus Christ, to that priesthood, to President Nelson, right, as the high priest on the earth. Like that's what I like to say up front, because then it kind of lets people put their guard down. They're like, oh, he's not competing, or the oaths he took in Freemasonry are not competing with the oaths that he took in the temple, to be frank. Okay, so I do not hold the position that members of the church need to be Freemasons in order to gain a higher necessary knowledge that the church cannot offer them. And I would actually say that the opposite is true. Freemasons need the church, right? Meaning all humans need the church. So if you're a Freemason, you need the church. If you're a church member, you don't need Masonry. And I'm very open about that. And I think the Masonic brothers would actually support me in that, because your Lutheran friend, he probably would say the same thing about his church, right? His loyalty is to Jesus Christ, not to Freemasonry. Or if they ever came into conflict, the gospel would always be ahead of Freemasonry, which they're not, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my knowledge goes. They're not in conflict. They're actually like pretty aligned in their goals, which is to create better men, so that better men can create better societies.
Yeah.
So furthermore, if you don't have any questions about that, I asked the question, is Freemasonry totally useless, right? Is what it teaches, like, is it on, it's not 100% necessary, but is it at zero? And the answer is absolutely not. The Masonic rituals, they really do teach beautiful truths and moral lessons that would benefit any person that studies them. And that's really what
Just
Freemasonry
not women,
is all about.
right?
Yeah, not women. Although there are
No.
women chapters.
Yeah,
the Eastern Star is one that women can join. It's a women's only.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
They told
know
me
much
about
about that. Yes, I'm not a good resource for that, but you can easily go look that up and find their website on that.
Yeah.
But I would say that's what Freemasonry is all about. It's about providing principles to create better men, so that better men can create better societies. As I said Freemasonry is all about brotherhood, leadership, service, and character development, and it does a wonderful job in this role and function. Now, what can? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Do you have a question about
Oh,
that?
no. You keep going.
This is basically, and I have a really cool quote here from Brigham Young that I think is awesome that I want to share.
Yes, please.
What can Freemasonry offer that the church cannot? To be honest, the one point on this question that I've always said and feel very comfortable admitting is that the Freemasons do brotherhood or brotherly love much better than we do in the church. Maybe it's just my experience, but I don't think I've ever felt as close to my elders quorum as I've felt to my brothers in the lodge.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that that's not the case for every member of the church or every man in the church, but it's my feeling experience that many men in the church can relate to me. So I've learned much from Freemasonry. Yeah.
I'll just say, the brothers that I talked to in the Masonic Lodge, they were tight. I could sense very strongly they had each other's back. They had this brotherly love for each other.
Yes.
And I was a little envious of that. There's something about this positive masculinity.
Yeah.
This like positive masculine energy that I found in the lodge. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but like
it's very
it's pretty
apparent,
cool. That's kind of the reason I was like, man, I kind of like want to join you guys.
And the reason why is they spend a lot of time together in like just casually with their families together. They probably do dinners with their family. They do ritual practice. They do the rituals, but it's just like they spend time together in a way that we don't in the church. I feel like we have elders quorum activities, but it's like once a quarter. And so, and you
maybe your elders quorum.
Yeah, right.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, that's most elders quorum. Yeah.
Every other week you meet, in elders quorum, but like you don't feel close to Brother Johnson or Brother Brown or Brother Smith, who's, sitting in the back of the class, telling us about his mission 50 years ago. Like you don't feel close to them because you don't bond with a guy who's 70. But for me, I was bonding with guys who were, 50, 60, 70 years old in the lodge because we were studying together. We were learning the ritual together. And it was really awesome. Like my escort, or the person who leads you in your degrees, was a man named Charlie Young, awesome guy. and he was probably, I would say, late 70s, early 80s, and I felt and still feel really close to him to this day.
That's
And
awesome.
it's not like in my quorum, in my elders quorum. I guess they used to have high priest group, and I am a high priest, but they don't hold that meeting anymore,
Oh
and
wow,
so
you're a high priest. Wow.
I don't have an opportunity to
Aren't you?
bond
You're
with.
younger than me. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm 30.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You are younger than
So
me.
yeah,
Barely.
just by a little bit probably.
Yeah.
So anyway, here let me share this
And
quote
he's a
with you
high
from
priest
Brigham Young.
already. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
didn't even know they made those anymore. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because they
Bishopric
separated.
members, bishopric and high council members, I think, are one of the only reasons they're doing that
Yeah, yeah,
nowadays.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah.
okay. So I continue here. I've learned much from Freemasonry and would encourage anyone, members of the church or not, to look into it. I've been blessed by the connections I've made with brothers and that I've bonded with. And I feel similar. Here's the quote. Love this. I feel similar to how Brigham Young, a fellow Master Mason, felt when he said, quote, "Our religion is simply the truth. It is all said in this one expression. It embraces all truth wherever found in all the works of God and man that are visible or invisible to mortal eye." I love that our religion is truth. And it doesn't matter. And President Nelson, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, said this exact thing. It doesn't matter where the truth comes from. It could come through revelation. It could come through prophets.
Through
It
science.
could come through the science lab. Like,
Yeah.
if it's true, and I think even Joseph said that, and he might actually kind of be quoting Joseph here, that our religion is truth.
Mhm.
And so whether that comes from Calvinism or Catholicism or atheism, like, we take whatever truth is or wherever it's found, and we
Atheism. You're gonna throw atheism in there? I'm just kidding.
well, I
How
mean,
dare you?
if
I'm
they
just
want to
kidding.
use science or they want to use the natural materialist worldview, there may be some truth to learn from that. And I'm
No,
okay with
there
that.
definitely is, and I'm going through some interesting thinking about whether or not we are, as Latter-day Saints, naturalists or not. That's an interesting.
Yeah, I think we are.
I know some people think we are, yeah, and probably Jacob Hansen would say the same thing. You and him are probably in the same boat over there.
Yeah, just the
And-
idea in D&D 130 that says there's no immaterial matter.
Yeah,
Right.
but my pushback to that would be, but practically speaking, the finer matter basically acts like dualism. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
basically, practically
Yeah,
speaking,
practically, yes.
it's
But
not
theoretically,
naturalism.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think if push comes to shove, even a Christian wouldn't be beyond naturalism because the spirit's made of something, I think. And so
I mean, but what is the triune God made of?
without
not
parts,
matter.
passions, and so without parts would mean he's made of nothing.
Yeah.
So
It's like part of the
the
Matt
athe-
said. The triune God is a God that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like, by definition.
so the atheists were right when and they just
Right.
yeah, exactly. See,
Right.
there's truth from
Yeah, they're very right to reject the triune God because it doesn't make any sense at all. Anyway, we're getting off topic.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. It's something. So one thing that I'm trying to do, and this is what I did with this Freemason video, is and in the past I'm like discovering this stuff and then presenting on it. Well, now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be like, I want to take people on a journey with me to learn about this stuff. So once I want to learn something, I started digging into that topic recently, and I was like, wait, I gotta pull out and stop and actually record all this and talk about what I'm learning, what I don't know, and then present that as something. Anyway, so that's what I did for the Freemasons, which is
Good way
why
to do it.
I went in there and recorded that, because instead of just learning all this and then presenting on it, I was like, I'm gonna go on this journey and take them down the rabbit hole with me, which included talking to you because I knew you were Freemason. It included talking to the Freemasons, and yeah, that quote, that scripture, or not that quote, scripture, that quote you just read from Brigham Young. I hadn't heard it before you shared it.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I went in there. While I was talking to these Masonic masters, I was like, there's truth in here. And the thing that felt the most true to me was this idea of love being greater when there's a vulnerability and a secret shared among two parties. You know what I mean? Think like
absolutely.
husband and wife, they're like, love grows because of this vulnerability that you share with each other.
Yep.
But in the Masonic Lodge, they had this brotherly love because they shared the secrets, and they talked about that. Like, we're close because we have
Yeah.
something that binds us
Yeah.
together.
And can I make
Yes.
one comment about that?
Yes.
I wish we kind of had more of that mindset in the church regarding
Yeah.
the temple.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, like we're always so quick to say the temple's not secret, it's sacred. I'm
No,
like,
but the secret's
it's
good.
yeah, it is actually a secret.
Yes.
You're literally you make a covenant to not tell certain things. Like if that's not a secret, I don't know what is a secret then. Like
Yeah.
you do, and there's a lot we can talk about,
Yes.
but I think that there was a bond that we've lost
Yeah.
amongst. And I think here's the cool part though. I think the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12 and even the 70, the first two quorums of the 70 that are the general authorities, I think I've heard stories that I won't share with you from personal friends who are general authorities.
You can't do that to me.
There's some offline, I'll tell you about it. There's some really cool things that the general authorities do together.
Oh, okay.
That is not public, and that
it's not that which must not be spoken of, right?
No, it's
the ordinance of which I don't want to talk about.
No, I mean we could talk about washing the feet and second comforter and things like that, but no, there's some other temple ritualistic things that they're doing together as brothers.
Okay,
that I get the hint or the feeling that they have more of a brotherhood than, say, like I said, our elders quorum or even our ward.
Well, I know they meet on like is it Wednesday or Thursday the 12th, or at least
Thursday afternoon.
Those that are in town, and they do a prayer circle. From what I understand, that's what they've. I think one of them said that at some point.
But not only with the 12, but like all the 70s.
All the 70s do it too.
Like in the upper rooms of the temple.
Yeah,
like,
I want to go in those rooms.
There's some really cool things there.
They're really cool.
And I mean, it's the true order of prayer is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? The old temples, like Salt Lake, St. George, speaking of St. George, have those meeting rooms. Those large
the assembly rooms.
Imagine like if we should do some stuff in there. Like imagine like an elders quorum activity just hanging out in there.
Well, I mean, like going to like when's the last time you had an elders quorum temple day?
Oh, it's been I don't know if I've even had one ever, honestly.
They don't do that. They go shooting, they go throw axes, they go play games down at the church or whatever. They do a cook-off. It's like you should go to the temple and like sit in the slush room with your elders quorum brothers and talk about the temple. Like we don't do that.
Yeah, but the Masons do that
they do
essentially
all the time.
And that's what makes them. But I left that lodge though having a greater appreciation for the temple, because I always think about it as building a relationship with Jesus Christ, the covenants there. I think that's the most important part. But when I left the Freemason lodge, my understanding was like the temple also gives me a deeper bond to every other member of the church who's been through there, because they know something. We both, you meet someone in Walmart, like something drops and you're like helping each other. It's like, hey, we know something that no one else knows. Like we love it. Like there's like an extra level of trust there. Absolutely. Because of the temple. And to your point, like that should be brought in a little bit more.
Here's what I'll say. I think it could be that, but maybe I'm being cynical, but I don't think we take the temple seriously enough to have that bond. I would say that most people, including myself, like we don't understand the temple well enough to like feel deeply about it. Like a lot of people feel negatively about the temple. They're like, oh, it's weird. It's like, okay, but maybe you don't understand that you're performing literally ancient rituals that are jam-packed with symbols and truth. Like you just sit there and think you're watching a movie. Like,
a slideshow now.
Like, you know what I mean? Like if you think it's a slideshow now. I wish I have thoughts about that. But if we really like internalize what the endowment and what the presentation of the endowment is and trying to teach us, we might be able to have that bond in Walmart. It's like, oh, this person gets it. But I struggle feeling like every member of the church actually gets it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I'm glad that you kept up with the Walmart example. That was great. Yeah. All right.
But I know what you mean. Like sometimes you're like, oh, they're wearing a temple garment.
Yeah.
But, like, do they actually know what the temple garment is even? Or you know what I mean? And like I said, I hope I'm not being too cynical. But
you're being a little cynical, because my thing coming out of the Freemason Lodge was I felt like I was being too cynical or at least maybe not cynical, but at least it opened my eyes to be like, I need to trust people a little bit more because they've gone through the temple. And like, I was a
Sure.
little envious of that brotherly love that they have.
Yep.
But I'm going to get us to the next segment, which is called Trunk Treasures. We're going with the elephant theme. And this is going to be all about the hidden gems of comments that were found on the Freemason video. And we'll react to those. Here we go. All right, so let me first, before we get there, let me give a shout out to the members of the channel. So first, just to reiterate, this is the purpose of the channel: elevate members of the church by building bridges of understanding through fun and informative content. And point number 2, help honest actors to take the church seriously by exposing limitations of critics and correcting misconceptions. So, Pachyderm members, we got Jacob Wardle, 6432, and Curious Mad Cat. Thank you. And we have the Mammoth members. You see the elephant got bigger there. Always searching for further light and knowledge. I'm trying to, all those contributions, I'm trying to actually follow the Thoughtful Faith model, Hayden, where it just helps me create better content. So yeah, here's, this is actually just Photoshop, so that's not what the exact outside looked like, but it would have been cool if they spray painted Mormon on the outside.
Yeah. By the way, can I make one comment about the square and compass?
Yes, please.
This is just my take.
Oh, sorry.
Don't take this for doctrine or official, position of the church. A lot of people will criticize Joseph for like stealing Masonic elements, which I want to say maybe for the square and compass and some other symbols. My thing is maybe he did, but my question is that a bad thing? And let me back up. The Freemasons would even say that they stole symbols and repurposed them for their own methods or for their own purposes. What I mean by that is like God, I think it's fair to say that God uses things in our time based on the people and the context and the time period to teach us truths in a way that we would understand it. So my point is it wrong for Joseph to see the square and the compass and to think, there's actually some symbolism there that we could apply revelation that I've received from God to those symbols to better help members of the church understand those revelations? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, I don't think it has to be like one or the other, like either he stole them or he didn't. It could be maybe he's using effective tools of teaching to teach truth. And my question is that wrong? And does that disqualify him as a prophet? You know what I mean? Necessarily? No. I don't think that's not the case. I think a critic would just write it off and say, oh yeah, he stole it, therefore con man. And it's like, okay, you're not really applying logic appropriately or fairly. You're just kind of dismissing it because you disagree with it, maybe.
Well, I think most of our scripture might be like that too, in a lot of ways, where
absolutely.
There's different literature elements that are being used to convey different things at different times. There's different stories. Yeah. There's even
look at the early Christian church is taking Jewish symbols and making it their own. It's like it's the dual nature of prophecy. Like you look at the prophecy of Isaiah, the Jews have answers for how those were fulfilled, and it has nothing to do with Jesus Christ. And then the Christians come along and take those same prophecies and they're like, no, this is Jesus Christ. And it's like, okay, there's actually a dual nature. They can both use the prophecy for their own teaching truth, essentially, is what it is, right? They're using those symbols to teach something based on their worldview. And I really don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Okay, so here are some of the comments. So first, this one says, yes, Joseph Smith copied / stole, speaking of which, some Freemason signs and symbols, no question. And they have no ancient origin. Yes, Joseph received revelation on the endowment with covenants made by blah, 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 but said nothing about the Masonic symbols until after he became a Freemason. As an active Latter-day Saint, I'm confident the Freemasons signs and symbols will be eliminated and done away with, as they have nothing to do with Jesus Christ's gospel.
Mm,
Interesting.
mm,
Okay, like kind of the
mhm.
person is a member of the church, and they
Sure.
think the Masonic stuff is bad and should be rooted
Mm.
out. Your thoughts, Hayden?
Yeah, I'm not opposed because here's the thing: the presentation of the endowment and the symbols are not the endowment. I mean, go back to the early revelations of Joseph in like 1830 and 1831. You have revelations being received from Jesus Christ to Joseph, talking about the temple, talking about the washing and anointing, talking about a greater temple endowment that's going to become like since the beginning of the restoration. The Lord and through Joseph, they've been talking about the temple. And so my reaction to this is I'm okay with that actually, but I wouldn't. I don't know. I would feel uncomfortable saying that something belongs or doesn't belong in the presentation of the endowment, considering I'm not the key holder. I think the individual who represents Jesus Christ can use particular symbols like Moses. I mean, Joseph Smith, President Nelson, they're like a modern day Moses. They can use particular symbols, items, staff, right? The serpent on the staff, or the seer stone that Joseph used, or President Nelson using a particular analogy or something like that to teach a truth. I'm okay with them rooting out the Freemason symbols because it's not about Freemasonry. It's about how are we teaching revelation, or
Mhm.
how are we teaching truths that are received through revelation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's
So I'm
about
indifferent
the
about this. I
covenants.
don't really care either way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say first off, Russell, fine art. I think you're speaking too much absolutes. They have no ancient
Yeah.
origin. Um,
That's just not true.
I don't know if that's true.
I mean,
Yes.
look, I mean, define ancient. Look at the Catholic Church.
Right.
Like temple symbolism is all over the Catholic Church. Like it's just uncanny how like how similar it is to us.
And the second thing I would say is even if some of it was taken from Freemasonry, I don't think that's
Mhm.
a reason to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, Revelation could dictate that it is to be gotten rid of, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
that as like a reason, this means it should go away and it will go away. I don't think so. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
everything like we've talked about is pretty much mostly based on other things, and that's not a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. Truth is truth, and I think some symbolism, or no matter how you do it, there's going to be symbolicness to it. Symbolicness, there's a word.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And I mean, does it have to be there? Maybe not. Okay, this one said the endowment is a work of men. Christ and the prophets in the Book of Mormon are clear that scriptures contain the fullness of the gospel. It's so sad that the early church looked beyond the mark. That's interesting. So this person
Yeah.
says the endowment is not, given by God, but in the Book of Mormon, it's clear that scriptures contain the fullness of the gospel. So this one is like a sola scriptura Latter Day
Yeah.
Saint. Is what it
Yeah. But
sounds
you
like
know
to me.
what? This person is probably not an active believing member in the Russell M. Nelson Church. They kind of, if I had to guess, I would say they're probably in the polygamy denial camp. This is how the polygamy
Probably.
denialists, which is funny because they worship Joseph Smith essentially. At least that's how it feels sometimes. But Joseph was the one who administered the first temple endowment. So I don't know how you get around that. And they'll probably just say, oh, Brigham Young and John Taylor forged it and Joseph had nothing to do with it. It's
Well,
like,
from what I understand, when the Saints moved west, a lot of the original manuscripts of what was supposed like the play part of the endowment, if you will, was lost. This is what
mhm,
I was told. So I went on tour in St. George while we were living there. We went and toured Brigham Young's house that he has down there. Really cool.
mhm,
And in that tour, so Brigham has his house, and on the side of the house, he had an extra little room, a meeting room, because he was getting old and needed to still work on church stuff, and he'd have a lot of like the apostles and first presidency in there. And one of the main tasks that they were working on was to recreate the endowment that had been lost. This is what they
mhm.
told me. And I don't know to what extent they had to recreate it. But from what I understand is they had to kind of write it all out from their memory as best as they could. And they would all collaborate and be like, okay, what happened here? How does this work here? And
Mhm.
obviously well, I guess not obviously for non-believers, did so in the spirit of revelation as much as possible. And so, I don't know, maybe that's how they get around the idea that Joseph Smith, if this person is indeed the non-polygamy camp.
But I think isn't the historical record pretty clear that Joseph like charged Brigham to systematize the endowment? He's like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I remember the quote. The quote is like, Brigham, like we made, because they were waiting for the Nauvoo temple to be built and it wasn't getting finished quickly enough. So they're like, we need to do this in the red brick store.
Yeah.
He gives the endowment. They dress the room with plants and they try to make like a garden and they go through that ritual. I'm sure it took hours to act it out as they, did in the olden days.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure Joseph's words were in the realm of, this wasn't exactly right, but it was the best we could do with what we had, considering we're not in the temple. Brigham, you need to figure out, like, you need to write a script, essentially. Like, you need to systematize this because all Latter-day Saints will need to receive this in order to receive their exaltation.
And that tracks with the crisis after Joseph Smith dies. The what's the crisis called?
Yeah, the succession
crisis. Wait,
yep.
Don't know.
Totally tracked with Brigham. Yep.
Yeah, because that's what I understand too. Is that Joseph was like, he did that for the 12, and really was preparing them, like giving them everything they needed to take the church, and that included the endowment. So that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think even the Brigham, the Bickertonites, I should say, would agree with that, because they dismiss, the Doctrine and Covenants and kind of like later Joseph Smith stuff. In that sense, they would probably agree that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Joseph Smith church. And they might say that they're the Book of Mormon church, because I think then the Signy Rigdon, anyway, that's kind of interesting stuff I've been thinking about too. But we're the church that followed the Quorum of the 12.
Sure.
Out west.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yep. Who held the keys? Who else held the keys?
Right.
Nobody.
And so when people are like, you're the Brighamite church, I'm like, no, that's the Quorum of the 12 church.
Yeah, it's the Apostle Church. That's right.
Okay, this one's funny. Brandon Sorensen says, who cares what some argue? Because right at the beginning I say, some argue that Joseph Smith copied the Freemasons. It's clear that the rituals were blatantly copied. Interviewing a Mormon to prove Mormonism, you can't make this crap up. This is why I said at the beginning, did we prove Mormonism? It's really
That's
funny.
actually really funny.
Yeah.
So Brandon Sorensen, I don't know if he's watching this. It's clear that the rituals were blatantly copied. Okay, I don't know how else to say it. Like, as somebody who's been through the Blue Lodge Masonry, which is the first 3 degrees, which is what Joseph went through, and the Temple Endowment, like Brandon. Oh shoot, what is his last name? Why am I spacing? Buddy, last night. Why am I spacing on his last name? Remember he joined our Word Radio?
I don't know his last name, but your buddy from St.
George.
So
yeah, he's St. George Passport for Master. Great guy. I'm feeling so bad I can't remember his last name right now. But he said it's probably about 5%, meaning there is some overlap there, but the major overlap is the method of teaching. It's the dramatization. It's the play-like nature of teaching. Because, like I said, and I don't know how much of this you put in your video, the Temple Endowment is about the creation. It's about Adam and Eve. It's about them being cast out of the garden. It's about them making covenants and receiving inspiration and revelation through prophets, through messengers. The Masonic ritual has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with building Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
And it doesn't talk about Adam and Eve. It doesn't talk about Jesus Christ. It doesn't talk about covenants. They make oaths with each other, not with God necessarily, but they're making oaths, and they're keeping secrets based on their like initiation degree, right? And so anyway, I'm just here to say, Braden Sorensen 966 or whatever.
Braden, yeah.
That to say that just shows me that you just don't know what you're talking about. And I don't know how else to say it. Unless you are a Freemason and a Latter-day Saint, I'm not sure how you can speak to that. And that would be my
and the
response.
funny thing is I didn't just interview you. I interviewed Freemasons. Well, that's kind of what I talked about. It's like, I'm a Latter-day Saint. I don't need to interview a Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to the Freemasons who have that perspective. I can talk to myself about the Latter-day Saint perspective. And then it's like, Hayden Carroll has both perspectives. So I tried to hit all 3 angles there. But I love that. That's so funny. Interviewing a Mormon to prove Mormonism. That replies from me. I laughed at that. That was funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
Let's get a few more here. Ether 3 proves that Joseph Smith knew about the endowment long before Nauvoo. I put the segment in there from Don Bradley where he talks about the brother of
Yep.
Jared, and it's a temple experience, which I think is eye-opening and amazing.
Yep. Which I would caution using the word proves. I wouldn't be that strong.
Yeah, that's true.
I would say it's pretty cool connection that we can use as a faith building experience, probably.
Yeah, but nothing proves anything, right? You're into that philosophy area. Like,
no, you can't prove.
You just have your whatever your epistemology is gives you evidence, and you put your cards on the table.
Confident. Yep.
There's no such thing as proof for you. So it's a Gordon Mella. You're fine. I'm just kidding.
That's good. I like the sentiment. I think the sentiment is correct.
I'm just giving you a hard time here. Okay, it's Heather K says, I would not recommend Freemasonry to LDS people as a way to strengthen their faith. Do some research and you may see why. Do some research, Hayden. Why don't you just go into the Masonic Lodge and find out for yourself? Like,
okay, here's what I'll say. This is Heather K. Love ya. I kind of agree and I kind of don't, because like I said, I do not think it's necessary, but how can we ignore the fact that Joseph Smith, Hiram, Joseph Smith Sr., Parley P. Pratt, I mean, all of the Brigham Young, John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, like they were all Freemasons. And Heber C. Kimball, he's probably one of the most vocal ones. Go read what they say about Freemasonry and tell me that their faith was not strengthened by being a part of it. Like, you just have to be totally ignorant of what they said about it in order to say something like this. I think that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and the church is not saying you can't be a Freemason by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they're saying the opposite. They're saying you can't be.
Exactly. Yep. Like you can be a Freemason.
And again, I would resign. If they told me to resign, I would resign.
Yep. If a religion have a connection with Freemason, is a false religion. Hopefully I represented the grammar there. Mr. Sirius 369. Oh, that's a great name. I don't know why that would be the case. Any thoughts there?
It's just ignorance. Just people are afraid of what they don't know.
Okay. And now this comment isn't related to the video, but we're still in the Trunk Treasures, Hidden Gems. This is kind of what's going on a little bit today. So a true millennial, Matthew Watt, what's his last name? It cuts off. I forget.
I'm not sure.
The true millennial guy. This is a true millennial guy, right? He says, what's with all these atheist philosophers defending Mormonism recently? In the past few weeks, I've seen stuff from Alex O'Connor, Emerson Green, Nick Barron, Jung Logo, and a few others I can't remember.
That's thanks to Jacob Hansen.
Yep.
Jacob Hansen has put Mormonism on the board and basically shown why Mormonism is more convincing than any other flavor of Christianity.
Yeah, and you can thank Thoughtful Faith, Jacob Hansen, Hayden Carroll, and others who work on that stuff. Yeah, sorry, you were going to keep saying something.
Well, I was just going to say that if your viewers who are watching this segment that we're on now aren't familiar with what he's talking about, basically atheists and people who don't have any skin in the game are starting to realize that essentially there's a double standard from mainstream Christianity to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And what I mean by that is the most prominent argument that Jacob and I and others have been using is when you ask somebody, why do you believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Most of the time they're going to say, including Frank Turek, who I recently had an interaction with, a lot of their go-to is, oh, well, we have witness testimony. And even Alex O'Connor says the resurrection is really weird because you have these people who are willing to die for their testimonies of the resurrected Christ. But then when you start asking how many eyewitness, extant, meaning contemporaneous and firsthand accounts of the resurrection, essentially we have one, and it's Paul. And so the question is, a lot of people will say, Joseph Smith is a con man, but they won't apply that same standard to Paul. Right. A lot of people will say, there's no more apostles. Jesus Christ can't call any more apostles. And it's like, okay, but he called Paul.
Yeah.
So basically, Paul had a Joseph Smith experience, or rather, Joseph Smith had a Paul experience. Mm-hmm. And so the atheists are realizing the hypocrisy that we have more witnesses to the golden plates that Joseph had. I think there's like 19 firsthand witness accounts of the plates, and at least 3 of them or 4 of them, I guess technically, or maybe even 5, saw an angel. Right? They had miraculous witnesses along with the
They're
plates.
spiritual eyes, though.
Yeah, and that was refuted by the individual who reportedly said that. I think it was Martin Harris. He said, was it Martin Harris or
it might have been David actually, I don't know.
yeah, I think it was David Whitmer. He's basically like, no, like that's not what I'm saying.
Right, yeah.
Like, yeah, maybe it was considered a revelation.
He basically slapped that reporter like, no.
Yes, that's exactly
crazy.
right. So anyway, to get back to the true millennial, he's basically saying the atheists are realizing that the standard for the resurrection is not being, the witness testimonies are not being applied fairly to Mormonism.
Yeah.
That we would also point to witness testimony, and we actually have way more than the resurrection, and we believe in the resurrection. And so if we're going to use that standard, why are we not believing that Joseph had plates? And that's why you have Frank Turek and others. Frank
squirming
Turek, one of his most like favorite lines is, golden plates are not,
I can make those in my garage.
Yeah, I can make those in my garage. And it's like, okay, first of all, Joseph Smith didn't have a garage, and he didn't have the skills and the historical here. I think here's the main point. The historical record does not allow for Joseph Smith to just make plates. Like you have to become this like huge conspiracy theorist to say that Joseph like just made all this up. And then you have to deal with the coming forth of the Book of Mormon regarding the translation speed, the Hebraisms in it, the witness testimony of the translation process of the seer stone. There's just so much to just say it's not a miracle. I think Frank Turek, and actually Jacob and I are supposed to have a meeting with Frank Turek, hopefully here soon. And so we're gonna.
I'm super jealous because I really like Frank Turek. So it's kind of funny. Before I think Word Radio really took off and Thoughtful Faith and all this, there was really just this dead mine. Like nothing was good on YouTube as far as like LDS stuff or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You know, you had like these fluffy come follow me's, but that was it. Nothing serious, nothing philosophical. And it's kind of funny because I think Jacob talks about this idea of like there's different levels. Like is truth real? Is God real? Is Jesus Christ that God? And then you start talking about the restoration. Almost looking back, that's almost how my like YouTube watching experience went. You know, because I think I might have seen some Alex O'Connor stuff first, but then I got into Frank Turek a lot, and I like Frank Turek a lot.
But Me too. He's good at what he does.
He's great. But the funny thing is and same with William Lane Craig, and it just kind of blows my mind, is like they will be so precise talking about atheistic arguments and like taking them so seriously and being careful with their wording, talking about like, is God in time or not, or what does like it mean to be nothing, or anyway, all this stuff for their ontological arguments and Kalam cosmological arguments and crap. But then as soon as you bring up the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, every time it's like, wait, really? Like, come on, man. Like, you spent all that time, and then you just dismiss us like, well, I could make gold plates in my garage, which is Frank Turek's like, he says that every time.
He says like 100 times a day, and it's like, I'm going to chalk that up and give him some grace and say like, he just doesn't know. He just doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so that's what we're hoping to have a conversation with him about is how do you reconcile the double standard is essentially the question we're going to ask him.
That's why Thoughtful Faith has been doing such good work. Because it's funny because I made this video about Alex O'Connor when he was asked like, which Christian religion do you think is the most coherent?
Mormonism.
And he's like, Mormonism, you know. And it was a funny video, I thought, and I was like, yeah, he's not joining the church, but he did do the church a big favor, you know. I don't know if you've seen that, but the funny thing, I get all these comments that are like, oh, the Mormons are so dumb. Obviously, he's joking, and I'm like, of course he's joking. Like he's not like of course. Like, but why did he do the church? I still think though he did the church a big favor, and that's what I was trying to say in this video. Though it's supposed to be kind of funny. Like I'm trying to joke. It's funny how people just can't read jokes. And the big favor he's doing though is he's bringing up the church. That's all they have to do, and all of this is rooting back from you, Jacob, Thoughtful Faith, even Word Radio. That's helping people start to actually talk about the church. Start to take it seriously. And so it is funny to me that people are like, oh, the Mormons.
And that's the goal. The goal is not to convert Alex O'Connor. It's exactly to show the world, because he has a giant platform, that Mormonism should be taken seriously. That's
At
the
least
goal.
as seriously as the Christians. At
Yeah,
least. Maybe
and more
probably more
seriously when you
so.
consider,
Yeah.
yeah. But people just don't know what they don't know. That's
Yeah.
essentially the reality of it.
All right, so that's it for the hidden gems segment. Let's get into, I believe, breaking news stuff coming up next. Run. All right, so this is called where we talk about breaking news. This is called, what did I call this segment? The Big Ear Bulletin. So today in the news, class credit for serving an LDS mission. The University of Utah will now offer just that. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. Hayden, your initial thoughts on that? Do you have a college degree, right?
Yeah, I do have a bachelor's and master's in professional communication from SUU.
No wonder why your background in audio and everything is just so pristine, right? Is
Has
the
nothing to do with that at all.
Okay. I don't know much about communications, obviously.
Communication, it was mostly like public speaking and debate research, things like that.
Oh, well, then that applies to all your debate. And that's
Hey,
why have no fear going to Frank Turek and just being like, dude, I'm surrounded by a bunch of Christians that love your content. I even love your content, but you're wrong.
Yeah. And you know what's so funny about that? So not to derail us, I can't tell you how many mainstream credo Christians came up to me afterwards and were like, hey, that was really good. Like, Frank was not ready for that.
Can I say one thing? There's a few things that I like a lot of the stuff that Thoughtful Faith is doing to have the atheists take us seriously and whatnot, and that's in turn going to make I think the Christians have to take us more seriously because their main enemies do. But we are kind of dunking on the Christians a lot. And the Trinity's been hit really hard lately, and Jacob had a great debate or discussion with
it was so good.
I was, that like meme thing that's going around that's like, let him cook. I was thinking that when he was giving his side of the presentation, I was like, oh, here we go. And then the cross-examination part, I know this is supposed to be a little bit less formal, but that cross-examination part, I was disappointed that the Dr. What's his bucket? I don't know his name.
Yeah,
went straight into, well, let me tell you what you guys believe. And you believe in infinite regress. And it's like, okay, like, I guess that's kind of interesting, but like, it's not like Jacob, he didn't address anything that Jacob brought up.
No, Jacob doesn't believe in infinite regress. So
Jacob doesn't believe in that. Yeah. And you do, though. I've seen you say that you do. And it's a fascinating one for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't have to get deep into that, but
no. Jacob and I need to have a debate on that, and we need to have a debate on that, and we also need to have a debate on God's knowledge, theism versus open theism, or like absolute foreknowledge versus open theism.
Oh, okay. You think that he knows what's going to happen, and Jacob says no. Am I right?
Yeah, Jacob would say God knows all things that are possible, and the future doesn't exist, so it's not possible to know it. That's how he's all-knowing. And I would say that prophecy is the main crux to that, in that God has shown the future more than once to prophets, showing them exactly what's going to happen to like very minute details.
Aren't all prophecies conditional though?
Conditional upon agency, I guess.
Right. Sure. So, and if you have free agency, they might not actually happen, right?
Yes, but how do you get around, for example, Joseph Smith's name is prophesied in the Book of Mormon, and it knows his father's name.
There could have been, who knows, maybe there are a few Josephs that just, maybe it was supposed to be his great grandpa that was supposed to restore the church or something. And he just failed. Satan got to him in the sacred grove when he was praying, and it's like, and then finally Joseph Smith Jr.
was
finally able to be the one. I don't
know. There's more details to it. And there's some other, I actually wrote a little article on this probably about a year or two ago. And I had some other examples of like, here's God showing the future in such a way that like there's no way and actually,
wait. Can I just throw something out though real quick? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
That comes from 2 Nephi, which was translated from the Golden Plates, which wasn't written in English. So how do we know that the symbol that was put on there is like, some symbol that's like fill in the blank for whoever you are?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It could have been.
Anyway, keep going.
I'll just say this because I can't remember, and I'd have to pull it up. It would take too long. There are there are a non, or I should have say this, there are not a non-significant number of specific prophecies given in Scripture, to where I think it's more likely that God knows the future. And also, here's the thing: all these prophecies come true, and Jacob would basically say God is he guessed correctly. But my critique, and Jacob can correct me if I'm wrong on his position on that, but my response to that would be, okay, well, what's the difference between knowing the future and being able to guess the future perfectly? Like, it's a distinction without difference. And so I think, anyway, that's a whole other topic. And
Yeah, I want to
debate.
see that debate.
And,
So,
well, let me say this: I will say I actually would like to be an open theist because I think it solves a lot of problems, but I can't reconcile that with the nature of prophecy in Scripture. That's where I'm stuck.
okay, interesting. Yeah, I want to see that. Anyway, so back to this real quick. We have a class credit for serving LDS missions. I remember writing home in one of my letters. You served, yeah, you
I
served.
served in Salt Lake. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Salt Lake. I remember writing a letter that said something, or it might have been an email. Technology. Back when.
That's right.
Yeah. Now the stinking missionaries they're FaceTiming or whatever,
Like every week. Yeah. Or every day, some of them.
Every day. Anyway, what a bunch of pansies. I'm just kidding. No, but I wrote and said something to the effect of, I think I'm learning more on my mission than I could at any university. And now I will say this, because I studied math and then biomedical informatics. I obviously wasn't learning linear algebra or differential equations on the mission. That wasn't just going to pop into my brain. But I think what I was trying to say is like I was learning probably more about life and living and God, obviously, and just a lot of like lessons that I couldn't learn anywhere else.
Yep.
And so like I think it obviously is worth a lot, a mission. And it's good to see that universities are actually potentially, we'll see if this
they're recognizing that.
They're recognizing that,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, do they give credit for like working? Like, can't you get college credit for like having a job or an internship?
If in some circumstances you can get some credit for an internship, yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's something like this. Like,
could be. Yeah,
I don't know.
They should
I'm
give
okay
credit.
with it, obviously.
I mean, BYU does it where you take the language class and you can and get credits from that. I think most universities would actually let you do that. I don't think that's like a BYU thing. But then you have to serve in a place that gives you another language.
Yeah.
And so, but what about those who didn't serve where they learned another language? Like, there's some serious stuff that were learned there.
Yeah.
So I really like this idea. It's unfortunate that it's coming from Satan's University. I'm just kidding. University of Utah.
Yeah.
The woke University of Utah. I'm just kidding. But that's really cool. I don't know who this guy is in the picture that President Eyring is shaking hands with, but he must be a higher up.
Yeah, probably at the U of U.
Yeah.
That's cool though.
Yeah. And then this was kind of trending the other day. This is in our breaking news area. It says one of the hardest questions for Christians that so far only Latter-day Saints have a clear answer on is, why do we need a physical and or mortal body? And, I'm not a regular Christian, though I really respect and love all the regular Christians. And I got to say, I don't know if they do have an answer to that. And I'm sure they know their doctrine better than I do, but like I can't think of like why a physical body would be needed based on their understanding of everything. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. I like this, but I can't speak. I've never, like maybe like yourself, I've never talked about this with a creative Christian. I would assume he's referring to our doctrine of exaltation, like a body is required.
Well, we think God the Father is incarnate, and so
As a
Jesus
body,
Christ now, yeah.
It's hard to say without. I'm sure different Christians would have different answers. I mean, that's kind of the nature of not having a central authority, right? Maybe the Catholic Church would have an answer on this. I don't know.
Yeah, the Catholic Church is very interesting. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, we're at time here. That got 256 likes, 38 comments, 6 retweets. So that was one of the more popular ones of the week by LDS Chad. Pretty cool image there, I suppose. But yeah, one one for thought, I suppose. And yeah, I'd be interested to find out. So before we go, Hayden, what the famous question is, if you weren't a Latter-day Saint, what church would you go to? Would you, yeah, you want to answer that question for us?
Yeah, my belief in God and in Jesus Christ doesn't rely on the restoration, although it's heavily strengthened by it. I think
I'd
the
agree.
greatest arguments for theism are found in probably in three different arguments: in the moral argument, in the fine tuning argument, and I would say in the argument, I don't know what you would call it, the argument of the contrary to atheism, because I think atheism has some pretty crazy implications, such as no morality, such as no free will, such as consciousness is an illusion. So I think there's some really good reasons to believe in a creator, consciousness, and fine tuning and morality being probably the top three for me. Jesus Christ, I think the historical record is pretty clear, and the fruits of Christianity and how it's changed the world. So I find, amongst other things, so I find myself in the Christian camp still. So when you ask the question, I'm just giving a framework for my answer here. I probably would say either Catholicism or Eastern Orthodox, because I still, and maybe it's just because of my raising, I'm still concerned about the authority claims. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Protestantism and just like biblical Christianity with like non-denominational Christianity has too many problems when it comes to interpretation of the text, the canon. I think there's too many issues, and that's what Protestantism is. It's splinters and schisms. And so I would look for a central authority church if it wasn't the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
See,
Saints.
as a Freemason, I thought for sure you were going to say Satanism.
Oh yeah,
Just kidding.
that's probably my third one. No, they don't have a central authority. They have no organization.
So I'm actually right there with you. I love the Protestants, evangelicals, but there's something about structure and authority and the hierarchy that I think is necessary for a church. And so
Yeah.
I'd be looking for that.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. So if I had to say right now, I would definitely do a lot of investigating, but I'd probably lean towards being like an Orthodox Catholic, I think.
Yeah.
But the hard thing is, like, in this scenario, let's just say the Book of Mormon doesn't exist.
Sure.
Because the Book of Mormon, like, it might just be one of those things where I would continue to believe in the Book of Mormon. I share everything that you said, by the way, too. Like the God, Jesus Christ. I think that's independent. It always surprised me when people leave the church and they seem to jump straight to atheism, and I was like, wait a minute, like Jesus Christ, like,
because their testimony of God is built on Joseph Smith, and it's like that's probably not the right way to go about it.
Yeah. I think that's the case, and I do think that's not the right way to go about it. But it is interesting nonetheless to see that happen. Even I think in certain other religions that happen. It doesn't always happen, but there's something else I was going to say before we wrap up here. What was it? Oh, the moral argument. Funny you bring that up, because see, that's the reason, going back to what we were saying earlier about naturalism, if members of the church are naturalists or not. That's kind of one of the reasons why and it kind of depends on how you define naturalism, and I might not be defining this as like
saying like moralism can't, or morality can't exist in a naturalistic world.
That's what I would say. It's like a law, but then again, like, you might be able to skirt around it, because you could say like, hey, gravity, I mean, you can observe its action, but you can't like observe it. So maybe you could get around it somehow.
Well, I think Latter-day Saintism solves that problem by saying, like a lot of people would say, we're heretics for believing that God is bound by law.
Exactly.
But here's the cool part. I think here's how I would say it. We can be naturalists or even materialists, meaning that everything is material. But
are naturalism and materialism the same thing? Because I would say we are materialists, but I shy away from the naturalist part.
Oh, maybe I misunderstand the naturalistic.
No, I almost guarantee it's me that misunderstands, because you philosopher people, you have all these like words and ontologies and crap that, like, I don't know. I need to like work on my vocabulary here. So it could just be that I'm like saying the same thing as you.
Depends on how you define it, right? If you're saying like, oh, if I believe in spirits and God, like I'm not a materialist or a naturalist, if we use those interchangeably, I could see the triune worldview, God worldview, could say they're not, because God is not made of material. So not everything's made of material, essentially, is what they would say.
Sure.
But for us, we would say material,
It's
I think it's fair
fundamental.
to say, cannot, yeah, it's fundamental. It's self-existing, and it can't be created nor destroyed, but it can be organized. And I would say that within the natural world, particular laws exist, and we can't, here's the catch. I would say we can't really know what those are unless we have a perfect example to manifest or to teach, maybe,
Yeah.
those naturalistic laws. For example, like the law of chastity, right? Like
Yeah.
like sexual purity has implications, and that's debatable until you have a perfect being saying, no, this is how it actually is.
Yeah. So
Right? That makes sense.
so practically speaking, then,
Mhm.
as far as the atheists are concerned, I don't think they would say we're naturalists at all. Like, I don't think you can believe in life after death and still claim that you're a naturalist.
Yeah,
In that's what
probably
I think. But I agree
yeah.
with you that, like, when push comes to shove, we do believe that ultimately everything is like naturalism in the sense
Mhm.
that, but as you said, the caveat is we have not unlocked the full understanding of everything. You
Right.
know, like we don't know
Yes.
the physics behind a resurrection, for example.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
a pure naturalist, I would say there's no such thing. But we would say there
Right.
is, we just don't understand. Anyway, that's why
Yep.
when I talk about naturalism, at least, I think true naturalism, you can't get morality out of it, and I think there can't be life
Mhm.
after death, and I think it's all. I think naturalism, how I would see it, is just things that can be understood via science, and there's nothing beyond that. Everything beyond that's subjective, and I don't
Yeah.
think that.
If you can't observe it, you can't. It doesn't exist. Maybe.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I think.
Mhm. Yeah, but then then what about consciousness? What about memories? What about
Yeah, but
dreams?
they don't
Like,
think. Well, I would say that the true naturalist would say that some of that stuff is just an illusion.
yeah, yeah. I think you have to say it to be
I
consistent.
think that's what Alex O'Connor said. I think he sticks to his guns on
Hmm.
naturalism. Says that even morality is
Yep.
subjective.
Yep.
Boo, boo, Hitler.
That's right. Yeah, what do they call moral emotivists? I think is the terminology. It's like just what we feel, it's not even a real feeling. It's how our body is chemically reacting
Right?
to.
Yeah, it's not real. It's all just a
Yeah.
chemical reaction. The
Yep.
soda can on the
Which
table.
I actually respect that view from the atheist. I think an
I
atheist who
do
doesn't
too.
take that view, they're inconsistent.
You can be a logical atheist for sure,
Hmm.
but you have to have some beliefs that I'm not willing to take on.
Totally. Yep. I totally agree.
All right, Hayden, this has been awesome. I've really appreciated the conversation. You can be found at Thoughtful Faith. Is there anywhere else that if people want to
Thoughtful
reach
Faith
out?
YouTube and Thoughtful Saints Facebook group is where I typically hang around.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate the time. I'm going to close this out here. If you're willing, I'd love for you to stick on and tell me about what the heck happened with the 70, if there's something
Oh,
else there.
sure. Sure. Let's talk.
But let's go ahead and end this. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and we'll catch you in the next one.